Script 46. The sick girl and her dog. Find an empty medicine cabinet. What she did saved her life. Opening. It started with pressure, like a fist clamping tight around my ribs. I woke, gasping, the air sharp as glass in my throat. Cooper was already there, pressed against me, his warmth the only steady thing in the spinning dark. His nose nudged my arm once, then again, urgent and steady, as if he knew before I did that something was wrong. Each breath rasped shorter than the one before. I pushed the covers aside and staggered toward the bathroom, one hand gripping his collar so I wouldn't fall. The cabinet door squealed open. Empty shelves, no vial, no inhaler. Just my reflection, white-faced and panicked in the thin strip of mirror. My chest burned. Every inhale, scraped. I looked at Cooper, his ears pinned, eyes fixed on me, and whispered, "It's gone." He gave a single, sharp bark, the kind that meant, "Move." Somehow I understood. We couldn't wait for morning. We had to find it ourselves. The world outside my window still slept when the first chill crawled beneath the curtains. Cold always crept faster through this little rental, a tired house at the edge of town with thin walls and older windows that rattled when trucks rolled by. Mom called it our temporary home. She said her new job at the hospital would fix things soon. Most nights, it was just me and Cooper. He learned early how to listen for my slow breaths, how to nudge me when I drifted too close to danger. By evening, our house, usually filled with small, reliable sounds, the kettle's whistle, the radio playing softly from the counter, my pills clinking in their cup. Mom left sticky notes around the kitchen like breadcrumbs through our routine. Dinner's in the fridge. Don't forget medicine at 9. I always did as she asked, until tonight, when the empty cabinet stared back like a mistake I couldn't undo. My body felt like it was folding in on itself. Every inhale was a fight. I pressed my palm against my ribs and tried to steady them the way the doctor had taught me. Slow, through the nose, count to 5. It worked halfway before the dizziness returned. Cooper nudged my ankle, whining low, his ears flattened. He could always tell when something was wrong. On the counter by the microwave sat Mom's note from yesterday, curved handwriting that always leaned too far to the right. Refill tomorrow morning. Pharmacy closes at 10. Tomorrow might as well have been a lifetime away. I looked at the clock. A little after 4:30. 6 hours to wait without the medicine that kept my lungs open. 6 hours felt impossible. I thought about calling Mom, but the phone glowed red. 5% battery left. The reception here faded to nothing half the time anyway. She was probably still in the ICU, no breaks until dawn. I imagined her there under the harsh fluorescent lights, hair pinned back, hands gloved, saving strangers while I tried to save myself. Cooper padded into the kitchen, claws clicking softly. He nosed at the cabinet again as if the bottle might magically reappear. His collar tag jingled, the faintest comfort. "I know," I whispered. My voice came out thin. "We'll figure it out." I filled a glass with water and stared at the reflection of our little world behind me. The chipped counter edges, a stack of plates Mom promised we'd replace when her first paycheck landed, the blanket I'd left draped across the chair. It all looked smaller tonight, the kind of small that made you afraid to breathe too loud, afraid of what silence might answer back. The fever was creeping higher. I could feel sweat cooling on my forehead. I sat on the floor and let Cooper press against me, his heartbeat a steady metronome I could follow when mine raced. He smelled of earth and old shampoo, the scent that always meant safety. Every so often he lifted his head and barked once, sharp and protective toward the door, as if daring the night to come closer. I remembered the day we found each other, a summer afternoon 2 years ago at the shelter. Mom said I could choose a companion who'd keep me active between treatments. Most dogs barked or bounced. Cooper just watched quietly. The volunteer warned us he'd been nervous since rescue, but when I reached through the bars, he leaned into my hand like he already knew me. That was the start of us. Now he was here again, guarding me from the quiet panic clenching my chest. The empty inhaler lay near the sink. Useless plastic. I rolled it in my palm, thumb tracing the smooth edges. The weight of it felt heavier than before. Outside, the wind picked up, scraping tree branches against the siding. The world was still black, but beginning to pale at the edges. I needed to decide, wait for morning or move before the cold settled deeper inside me. Waiting meant risking another attack before anyone could help. Moving meant stepping into the bitter air, weak and alone, except for Cooper. I pushed myself to standing. My knees shook, but the floor steadied beneath bare feet. Scarf, I muttered, half to keep focus, half to reassure the dog. I pulled Mom's old scarf from the hook by the door. It smelled faintly of detergent and the lavender lotion she used when she got home late. The scent nearly undid me. For a second, I wanted to crawl back into bed, pretend I hadn't opened that cabinet at all. But another shallow inhale reminded me pretending wouldn't help. Cooper circled once, tail beating against my leg. Ready. I slid the phone into my coat pocket, although the charger cord dangled uselessly from it. Maybe there'd be signal once we were farther down the road. Maybe someone nearby could help. The nearest all-night store sat 4 blocks away, a place we usually passed on the way to the bus stop. If luck existed, they'd have something, anything, to ease the tightness in my chest. Before leaving, I turned off the kitchen light and looked once more at the cabinet door hanging slightly open. The reflection of the window pane cut across it like an empty cross. I tried not to imagine Mom's reaction when she came home to find the place empty. She would panic, of course, but I couldn't stay. Breathing had become a decision, not a reflex. The snow outside glowed under the street lamp. A thin layer swept across the yard. Cooper's paws sank silently as we stepped off the porch. Each breath stung with cold, sharp as needles, but cleaner than the air inside the house. I adjusted my scarf and pressed a hand to my chest, counting again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cooper stayed close enough that his fur brushed my knees. We had a long way to go, but staying wasn't an option. Let's find it, I whispered. My voice fogged into the air, small and determined. Cooper wagged his tail once, then looked toward the road as if he already understood where we needed to begin. The town looked different at night. Every house seemed smaller, pressed in by the weight of silence. Streetlights hummed faintly, fog gathering around their pale yellow glow. I tightened the scarf over my mouth, but cold air still sliced at my throat. Cooper trotted a few steps ahead, his breath a ghostly rhythm against the blanket of white. We moved like trespassers through a sleeping world. The first block passed slow. My pulse hammered behind my ribs. The world spun when I bent too quickly or coughed too hard, but I kept walking. The sound of our footsteps was the only thing tethering me to the street. Crunch, crunch, stop. Somewhere far off, a truck engine groaned, but the road ahead stayed empty. The corner store's red neon sign glowed faintly through the fog, half its letters burned out. I focused on it like a guide. It was only 4 streets from home, but the distance felt endless. My lungs rasped halfway there. I stopped at a metal fence post, leaning hard, the cold biting through my gloves. Cooper barked once and nudged my knee as if to scold me for stopping. Okay, I whispered between careful breaths. Almost there. The door of the store was locked. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. Pale face, scarf askew, eyes too wide. I knocked, a dull sound swallowed by the night. Inside, the faint shapes of shelves and a row of candy bars glowed under security lights. I knocked again, harder this time. My hand slid down the frosted pane. Nobody came. I let my forehead rest against the cool glass. The world tilted again. A memory surfaced, not sharp, but threaded through with warmth. Mom's voice 2 nights ago, driving us past this same corner. She had promised that once her paycheck cleared, we'd stock up on everything. No more empty cabinets, no more fear of running out. She'd smiled then, tired, but hopeful. We're getting there, she'd said. I wanted to believe it. I still did. Come on, Cooper, I murmured. No luck here. We turned down the side street. Cooper's paws left neat prints behind, his tail curved like a signal flag. Snow gathered on his back, tiny flakes clinging to his fur. My breath came in quick bursts now, each one shallower than before. The sound reminded me of the hospital monitors that used to beep faster whenever my oxygen dropped. I pressed the heel of my hand to my chest and forced the slow count again. 1, 2, 3. Breathe, girl, breathe! The houses on the street leaned close together, their mailboxes glinting under thin layers of frost. In the dark, they looked like bones, set upright in the earth. Curtains hung heavy behind every window, drawn tight against the storm. I wondered if anyone could hear us out here, if anyone would open their door if a child knocked at this hour. We passed the playground, its swings coated in ice, and I remembered summer evenings here. Cooper chasing a ball through grass, Mom sitting on a bench watching with the easy smile she rarely had time for now. That was before new shifts and late nights piled on top of each other like snow heaping on a roof. Back then, I never worried about air or medicine. I just breathed, and it worked. The wind shifted. Cooper looked up, ears twitching. His body tightened before moving forward again. Steady, purposeful. Ahead, a motion sensor light blinked to life. It flickered twice, then steadied over a driveway 2 blocks down. My chest squeezed not terribly, but enough to hurt. I followed the light, hoping it meant someone awake, someone who might help. Halfway there, another coughing fit bent me forward. The cold stung my eyes. I dropped to one knee, fighting the whirl in my vision. Cooper pressed against my side, whining, his warm breath brushing my sleeve. I rested a hand on his neck and felt the strength in him, solid, patient. "You're okay," I croaked. "I'm okay too." The lie was soft, but it steadied me enough to rise again. The smell of wood smoke drifted through the air, faint but welcoming. It came from a house with a steep porch and mismatched curtains. A faint porch light glowed golden behind the frost. I blinked hard, trying to focus. Mr. Hahn's place. I'd seen him once when Mom stopped by for advice about a new prescription. Retired pharmacist, quiet man with gentle eyes. He always smiled when passing our yard, though we hardly spoke. Cooper tugged at his leash, tail swishing. He seemed certain. I wasn't sure I could even climb the steps without collapsing, but if anyone would know what to do, it was him. I tightened my scarf, drew in a shallow breath, and moved toward the porch. Each step creaked under the snow's weight. The railing was icy. My glove stuck slightly as I gripped it. My knuckles looked gray, even under the porch light. I knocked, but my hand barely made a sound. "Please," I whispered. Nothing stirred inside. Cooper barked once, short and sharp. Silence answered. "Again, Coop," I said, voice trembling. He barked louder this time, the sound echoing off the nearby houses. A shadow moved behind the curtain. Relief came so suddenly that my knees nearly gave out. The door opened a crack, spilling warm light into the icy dark. Mr. Hahn blinked at us, his glasses slipping down his nose, his robe cinched tight. "Good heavens, he murmured. "Child, what are you doing out here?" My words tangled before they reached my mouth. I need medicine. Cabinet empty. Mom's still at work." He stepped aside quickly. "Come inside, you're freezing." The smell of peppermint tea and old books wrapped around me as soon as we entered. The warmth prickled my skin. Cooper followed, shaking snow from his coat, and then, sitting near the door as if guarding it. I sank onto the rug, breathing shallow, but easier in the heat. Mr. Hahn knelt beside me, worry creasing his face. "Breathe slow," he said. "I'll check what I have." He moved toward a shelf lined with bottles and boxes. His hands trembled slightly as he searched. I heard glass clinking. He turned back after a moment, shaking his head. "I'm sorry. I used to keep samples for emergencies, but supplies been delayed for weeks." My stomach dropped. Cooper whined softly, sensing my panic. Mr. Hahn noticed. "Don't worry, child. We'll find a way. There's the clinic on Maple. They keep backup stock." "It's closed," I whispered. "Locked up. Then we'll call them. My phone's dead." He looked toward the old rotary telephone near his couch and sighed. "Lines are down tonight. The storm cut them again." He rubbed his temple, thinking. "But I have a car. We can try to get there before the roads close." Outside, snow had begun to fall again, fat flakes drifting against the window pane. I stared at them, dizzy with the idea of moving back into that storm. Mr. Hahn poured tea into a mug, slid it toward me. My hand shook as I took a small sip. The warmth soothed my throat, but not the fear rising in it. "You're the brave one tonight," he said quietly. "Most adults I know would have given up till morning." I tried to answer, but only a hoarse whisper came out. "Can't wait. Need it now." He nodded slowly, decision made. "I'll get my coat. You sit still a moment." Cooper stood and padded over, tail wagging once. I leaned against him, his weight grounding mine. The room blurred around the edges, but, one thought, stayed clear. There was still a chance. We just had to reach it before my time ran out. Mr. Hand's living room felt like an old photograph. Warm light, lace curtains, the faint hum of a space heater working too hard. I sat wrapped in one of his worn blankets while he rummaged through a drawer near the hallway. My breathing rasped just beneath the soft ticking of the clock. Cooper lay close enough that his paw rested against my slipper. Every few seconds he lifted his head to glance at the door, ears tense. Mr. Hahn returned with his coat, half-buttoned, his scarf askew. The urgency in his face lent him sudden youth. "Keys are here somewhere," he muttered, patting his pockets until the small metal jingle calmed us both. He looked at me then. "Can you stand if I help?" I nodded, even though my legs felt hollow. The edges of the room pulsed faintly with each heartbeat. Cooper rose when I did, supporting part of my weight with his shoulder against my thigh. I managed a thin smile. "He thinks he's a nurse." Mr. Hahn chuckled quietly. "A fine one." His voice softened. "You said your mother works nights at the hospital, yes?" When I nodded again, his eyes clouded. "Brave woman. She helped my wife once, before the illness took her. She'll worry if she comes home to an empty bed." Guilt pricked at me like pins under the skin. "I left a note," I said, though it was only half true. A scribbled, "Be right back" on a scrap by the sink. He didn't scold me. Instead, he handed me a small wool hat hanging by the door. "Put this on. Storm's heavy," he said, and then added gently, "I don't have grandchildren. Tonight, you'll let me pretend for a while." Out on the driveway, snow sifted sideways through the wind. His sedan waited under a thin sheet of frost, the shape of it barely visible. Cooper jumped into the back seat while Mr. Hahn brushed off the windshield with slow, stubborn sweeps. The cold bit every bit of exposed skin on my face. Each breath made my ribs rebel. I leaned into the seat's warmth once the heater started buzzing. Mr. Hahn drove slowly at first, wipers squeaking in a rhythm that pressed itself into my head. The small spheres of light from the dashboard reflected in his glasses. "How long have you been managing this asthma alone?" he asked, eyes on the road. "Since spring," I said, voice thin. "Mom's schedule got worse. I just follow the chart the doctor gave us. Usually, I'm fine." The last word cracked like glass in my throat. He didn't answer right away. The tires crunched over ice patches, and the headlights carved tunnels through the swirling snow. "You shouldn't have to be the strong one, you know," he said at last. "Children think being brave means handling everything, but sometimes it means asking for help before it's too late." I whispered, "I didn't want her to lose her job." That started another silence. Heavier now. Cooper rested his chin on the seat beside me, watching my face as though assessing each breath. I stroked the soft patch behind his ear. "We'll be okay, boy," I murmured. Up ahead, the road narrowed where the plows hadn't passed. Tree branches bent under the new snow. Mr. Hahn gripped the wheel tighter, squinting. "Almost there. The clinic's just beyond that turn." He didn't sound certain. His hands trembled on the leather. A sudden crack split the night. A large limb crashed across the road, scattering snow like shards of glass. The car jerked to a halt, and for a moment, everything blurred in white. "Stay calm," he said quickly, leaning forward to examine the obstacle. "We can move it." I opened my door, but a rush of icy wind knocked the air from me before I took 2 steps. My lungs seized in protest. I grabbed the car's edge for balance while he struggled with the branch's heavier end. Cooper jumped out, barking sharply as if to keep us moving. A coughing fit doubled me over before I reached the trunk. Mr. Hahn turned instantly. "Enough," he commanded. "Back in the car. I'll manage." "No," I gasped. "Let me help." He looked ready to argue until he saw my stubborn glare, my mother's expression reflected back at him. So he nodded once. Together, we dragged the smaller pieces aside until a narrow path opened through. His breath came rough, wheezing faintly. When he paused, one hand pressed to his chest. Worry replaced my fatigue. Are you okay? I asked. He nodded, though his color had drained. Old heart reminds me it exists sometimes. Don't tell your mother, he tried to joke. Then softer. Get us back inside. You'll drive slowly while I catch my breath. I froze. Drive? He handed me the keys with a faint smile. You know the basics, yes? Steady hands, gentle foot. I swallowed fear with one shallow breath and nodded. Hands shaking, I slid into the driver's seat. Cooper climbed beside Mr. Han as if ready to supervise. The car crept forward under my control, only a whisper of motion down the narrow lane. Snowlight gleamed over the hood, making everything unreal. The kind of scene that lived only in stories adults told about courage they once borrowed from luck. Mr. Han guided softly. Good. Keep between those reflectors. That's right. His voice was calm, almost a lullaby against the noise of the storm. By the time we reached the crossroad before the clinic, he had taken back the wheel. The building appeared like a specter. Low roof, faint glow from emergency lights near the back door. The front gate hung padlocked. I could barely see the sign through blowing snow. He parked beside the dumpster, breathing hard but steady. We'll have to walk from here, he said. My body shook in exhaustion. Each shallow inhale cut sharp, but the idea of stopping felt worse. We stepped out again, Cooper immediately leading, nose high, tail flagging against the wind. Lights were out across most of the clinic, but a single dim glow trickled from the far wing, probably the janitor's night office. Mr. Han pointed toward it. We'll try there. We followed Cooper's paw prints to the door. The handle refused to turn. Mr. Han knocked, then dropped his head toward the small window. Anyone? He called. No reply. Cooper barked twice, claws scraping at the metal. My knees nearly folded underneath me from the effort of standing. The world seemed to shift between dark and bright patches, like blinking. Too long without oxygen. I can't, I whispered. Can't breathe right. Mr. Han's face tightened with renewed fear. Hold on, child, just hold on. He knocked harder, pounding with the side of his fist. Open up! Emergency! At first, nothing. Then a shuffle echoed from inside, a beam of light slicing through a crack in the blinds. Cooper barked again, desperate and demanding. The door opened a few inches, a startled older man peering out in work overalls, mop in hand. What's going on? She can't breathe, Mr. Han said firmly. His usual softness vanished. She needs medication now. You know me? Han, retired from the Maple Pharmacy. Recognition flickered in the janitor's eyes. He swung the door wider. Bring her in, quick! Warmth hit my face like another kind of shock. My body relaxed too soon, and I staggered forward into the janitor's arms. Somewhere near my ear, Cooper's bark turned frantic before fading into echo. That was the last clear sound I heard before the brightness in the hallway overwhelmed the dark that had been closing fast. When I woke again, headlights carved thin tunnels through the white curtain outside. The first thing I saw was Cooper's shape in the back seat, his brown eyes reflecting every pulse of light. Mr. Han's hands gripped the steering wheel tight, veins standing out against the leather. The heater hummed weakly, a tired whisper under the engine's growl. I breathed shallowly, nursing each inhale like a fragile thread. Where are we now? My voice came out hoarse. Halfway, he said, eyes never leaving the road. The wind's picking up fast. The windshield blurred almost instantly after every sweep of the wipers. Snowflakes spiraled sideways, bright against the beam, then vanished into the dark. Cooper whined softly. I reached a hand back to him, fingertips brushing his fur. His breathing steadied me. Mr. Han gave a small nod toward the glove box. There's a thermos. Hot water only, but drink some. I unscrewed the cap and took a sip. The warmth felt like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Do you think the clinic has my medicine? If fortune's kind, he said. They keep emergency stock behind the locked refrigerator room. I just hope the janitor hasn't gone home yet. The road narrowed into an uphill curve. Our headlights struck the forest edge, bare trees bending under ice, their shadows waving like black arms. Tires slipped once, twice. Mr. Han murmured what I guessed was a prayer in Korean before easing the car back on track. My chest squeezed again. A slow, familiar warning. I pressed a hand to my ribs. I can't. The air feels thick. Look at me, he said, glancing briefly from the road. Count like before. 1, 2, 3. The numbers tangled. My vision flashed white for a beat, then cleared when Cooper let out a sharp bark. I heard Mr. Hahn's sigh of relief. Overlay the wind, Good. Keep listening to him. The dog's got stronger lungs than both of us. I managed a faint smile. He should be the one driving. That earned a small chuckle from him, brief but real. If he could reach the pedals. The laughter faded as we turned into the open stretch near the river. Wind slammed against the driver's side like fists. Drifts piled into the center of the road, erasing the painted lines. The car shuddered. Are you okay? I asked. Eyes fine. Hands fine. Just can't feel my legs much, he admitted. He tilted the mirror once, scanning the whiteness behind us. You'd think I'd have the sense to stay home tonight. I didn't know what to say to that. So I hummed, low and distracted, a tune Mom used to sing when my chest hurt. Cooper tilted his head, then rested it on my knee. The road bent again, rising toward town. That's when we saw the shape. A dark barrier sprawled across both lanes, snow heaped along its edge. Mr. Hahn braked. The tires slid before catching hold. A fallen limb stretched from a power pole to the ditch, thick as my waist. Live wires dangled, spitting weak sparks into the snow. Can we go round? I asked. He studied the shoulder. It's steep there. Might send us right into the riverbank. We sat in stillness for a long breath, the wind growling through the gaps in the door. Then he clenched his jaw. We're not turning back. He reached for the door handle, coat already half unzipped. Wait, I protested, grabbing his sleeve. It's dangerous. So's waiting, he said. If we clear the small branches, the plow tomorrow won't bury them deeper. I'll manage. He stepped into the storm before I could argue. His figure blurred within seconds, swallowed by the blowing snow. Cooper barked anxiously, pacing in circles. That sound pulled me into motion. I shoved open my door, the cold knifing through me. Stay! I shouted, but Cooper ignored it, bounding after Mr. Hahn. Snow crunched loud beneath us, the kind of cold that hurt instantly. I grabbed an end of the smaller branch, trying to lift it out of the drift. My breath stuttered. The world narrowed into heartbeat and wind. Heartbeat and wind. My ears rang. Mr. Hahn called something, muffled through the white noise. I thought he said, Enough. Then came a heavy wheeze. I turned. He was hunched, one hand against his chest. No, I gasped, stumbling toward him. My feet slid on the ice until Cooper intercepted, pressing between us, barking sharp commands only he understood. I'm just old, Mr. Hahn said, voice gravelly. Not broken. We're fine. But he wasn't. His face had grayed under the car's weak lights. I guided him back to the passenger seat, heart pounding. You're not driving right now. His protest died in another cough. He reached into his pocket and dropped the keys into my hand. Gentle on the pedals, he said softly. That's all there is to it. Fear clamped around me as I settled behind the wheel. The seat felt too big, the world too small. My feet barely reached the pedals. Cooper jumped in next to Mr. Hahn and sat tall, watching me the way nurses watch monitors. Okay, I whispered to myself. The car trembled when I turned the ignition. Headlights cut through the snow again. I eased forward, slow and trembling. The wheels found shallow grip where we'd cleared a path. That's it, Mr. Hahn murmured, half awake. Steady now. Follow the bank lights. I nodded, though my throat ached. The steering wheel buzzed under my palms. Every movement felt measured, borrowed. Minutes stretched into forever until the outline of Maple Clinic emerged ahead, a low structure behind a chain-link fence, its sign half hidden under snow. Relief washed through me too fast. It made me dizzy. We made it, I breathed. Mr. Hahn's eyes fluttered open. Good girl. We rolled to a stop by the gate. The snow had sunk high against it. I pushed open my door again. The cold bit straight to bone. Cooper leapt out before I could leash him, nose to the ground, navigating the invisible trail. Wait, I called, but he was already headed toward the side path beside the dumpsters. I followed, boots sinking deep. Mr. Hahn steadied himself on the fence, breathing shallow but firm. The clinic stood silent except for the hum of a distant generator. A single security bulb glowed above the back entrance, a feeble halo in the whiteout. Cooper scratched at the door, tail stiff with focus. Janitor's room should be here, Mr. Hahn said between breaths. Try knocking. I rapped weakly. My knuckles felt wooden. No reply came. My chest constricted again, each inhalation shorter than the last. The edges of my vision pulsed dark. Please, I whispered to the metal. I tried again, harder. Snow gathered on Cooper's muzzle as he barked, a deep, commanding sound that filled the storm. For a breath, wind answered with nothing. Then, faintly, a shuffle came from inside. A light flickered. Shadows moved across the frosted window. Cooper barked again, frantic now. The latch clicked. The door cracked open, warm air spilling out like mercy itself. A man's tired voice cut through the noise. Who's there? Mr. Hahn's arm was around my shoulders by then. Emergency, he said, his own breath short. Child can't breathe. The janitor's eyes widened when he saw us. Inside, quick. I stumbled forward. The floor welcomed me with heat that felt unreal. My knees buckled, and the world tipped sideways. I caught the outline of Cooper following close, snow melting in streaks down his fur. Then there was only brightness, and the hum of safety that came from being, at last, somewhere warm. When I opened my eyes again, overhead lights buzzed dimly, flickering against dull green walls. The smell of disinfectant and cold metal filled every breath. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then Cooper's wet nose pressed my palm, and reality came rushing back. The clinic, the storm, the medicine. A man crouched beside me, holding a flashlight and a mop handle that looked worn to splinters. Easy there, kid, he said. You passed out for a second. Breathe slow. Mr. Hahn leaned on the wall near the door, hand pressed against his chest, color mostly back. We need her medication, he said. It's urgent. The janitor nodded uncertainly. I can call emergency services, but the landlines are spotty tonight. Power keeps flickering. Then try, I whispered, voice shaking. Please. He hurried to a small desk phone. Tapping numbers with trembling fingers, the dial tone screeched, cut out, came back. Nothing, he said after a moment. Signal's down. Panic ticked in my chest like a clock running too fast. The air felt thin, again, drawn through a straw. Cooper pawed my leg, sensing it before I could speak. I clung to his fur for balance. The medicine room, I forced out. Can you open it? The janitor hesitated. His name tag caught the light. E. Mason. I've got keys to most rooms, but the pharmacy cabinet's special coded. Nurses use a card. Mr. Hahn groaned softly and straightened. Then we find the cabinet anyway. I can identify what she needs. Together we moved down the hall, my steps unsteady on the waxed floor. Emergency lights pulsed red every few feet, making shadows jump. The hum of refrigerators and the faint drip of melting snow from our clothes made the place sound alive. We reached the medicine storage, a steel door with a small keypad and a faded label. Authorized staff only. Mr. Hahn pressed his palm to it like prayer. This is it. The keypad screen glowed weak green numerals. The janitor sighed. Outdated code, still numeric. Management never replaced it, but nobody told me the combination. I leaned against the wall, coughing. I saw it once, I rasped, on a clipboard, when Mom brought me here last month. Mr. Hahn's eyes sharpened. Do you remember the numbers? My head spun as I searched my memory. The clipboard had hung beside the nurse's station, scribbled with shift checklists, one corner torn, a date, a time, then 4 digits, circled in red. 1, 9, 2, 8, I said slowly. I think. I'll try, Mr. Hahn said, tapping the sequence. The panel beeped once, then flashed error. The sound echoed down the hall. Cooper flinched and looked toward the door, ears flat. Wind moaned outside, rattling the glass like knuckles. It's close, Mr. Hahn muttered. You remembered something right. There must be a last digit. I pressed my hand to my temple. A 5, maybe 5. He entered it again. Error. The janitor exhaled hard, frustration cracking through. If that system locks up, it times out for 10 minutes. We don't have 10 minutes. He dug through a drawer by the wall, tossing aside old forms. There used to be a copy of the code somewhere. Cooper trotted in circles, nails striking the tile. I tried to steady my breath. Each inhale tasted of metal and fear. I bent forward, elbows on my knees, counting between gasps. Then I heard a soft scrape. Cooper had shoved his paw under the desk, tugging at something half hidden in dust. "That's nothing, boy," Mason said absently, but Cooper kept scratching. Papers fluttered out, one by one, until a small notebook slid free, its cover warped by moisture. I crawled forward, fingers shaking, and opened it. Inside, among pen marks and coffee stains, a number stood alone. 19285. "It's here," I whispered. Mr. Hahn entered it quickly. The keypad beeped twice, then clicked open. Relief knocked the strength from my legs. The door creaked inward. Rows of vials gleamed under the faint emergency light, labels shining like snow. My eyes blurred through the fatigue, but Mr. Hahn identified the small round inhaler model within seconds. He lifted it reverently, almost smiling. "Thank heaven." Mason hovered behind us. "We normally verify doses first." "No time," Mr. Hahn said. He turned to me, voice firm but gentle. "Use half a dose. Small burst. Breathe deep." My hands shook as I removed the cap. The air caught in my throat before the first mist reached my lungs. I pressed again. Slower, and cold medicine filled the hollow ache inside. Relief arrived, not like thunder, but like sunlight through thick clouds. Quiet, steady, miraculous. I leaned back against the wall, tears breaking loose before I knew they'd fallen. Mr. Hahn let out a shuddering laugh, half joy and half exhaustion. Mason stepped aside to grab a towel from the sink. "You're okay now, kid, right?" I nodded weakly. "It's working." Cooper nosed my knee, tail sweeping small arcs across the floor. We sat there for maybe a minute, letting the stillness settle. My lungs opened further with every breath. Then Mason's radio crackled faintly. Static followed by a clipped voice. "Dispatch to Maple Clinic. Reported respiratory distress. Units en route." He blinked. "Guess the line worked after all. That might be them calling in." Mr. Hahn sagged in relief. "Good. Keep it open. Guide them here." I stayed near the cabinet, the cool steel against my back grounding me. For the first time that night, the fear began to ebb, replaced by exhaustion so heavy it felt sweet. But the hum from the refrigerators shifted suddenly. Quieter, unsteady. The lights overhead flickered, dimming to deep amber. "The generator's failing," Mason said. "Storm must have tripped the breaker outside." I swallowed hard. "Does that mean the medicine? It'll hold as long as the fridge does," he said quickly. "Don't worry about that now." Mr. Hahn placed a hand on my shoulder. "You did it," he murmured. "You saved yourself, and me too." The softness in his voice undid me. "I didn't do it alone." "You recognized where hope lived," he said gently. "That's more than most." Another distant wail grew clearer through the wind, the cry of sirens laboring up the snowy road. Mason hurried toward the front windows, flashlight bouncing off walls. "They're close." I tightened my scarf again, though the room was warm now, instinct from the hours outside. "Can we meet them halfway?" Mr. Hahn shook his head. "They'll come to us. You're not going back into that storm. Not yet." Minutes later, the sound grew louder, joined by the crunch of tires against ice. Blue light ghosted across the frosted panes, flashing through the hall. Mason waved at the entrance, shouting directions. I closed my eyes, listening, doors slamming, hurried boots, voices calling. Cooper barked once, sharp and proud. When the paramedics reached us, the room seemed to bloom with new color. Bright jackets, gloved hands checking vitals, crisp efficiency. One of them smiled as the oxygen mask came near my face. "You're a lucky one," she said. "Good thinking getting here." Through the blur, I saw Mr. Hahn sink onto a bench, relief flooding his lined face. Cooper sat beside him, steadfast. Mason leaned against the doorframe, mop forgotten. The oxygen hissed softly. The world narrowed to that sound, and the steady thump of a loyal tail against the floor. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I reached for Mr. Hahn's hand. We made it, I whispered. He nodded slowly. Because you refused to wait. Outside, the first light of dawn pressed faintly through the retreating snow. The air smelled clean again, like something starting over. The siren's echo still lingered in my ears when the paramedics lifted me into the back of the ambulance. The cabin smelled of antiseptic and rubber gloves. I could taste plastic from the oxygen mask pressed to my mouth, but it was the sweetest taste in the world because it meant air. One of the medics, a woman with tired eyes and steady hands, checked my pulse. "Keep breathing for me," she said. "Nice and slow." Mr. Hahn climbed partway inside before they stopped him. "I'll follow in my car," he told them, voice cracked from exhaustion. He reached over to squeeze my wrist. "You'll be all right now." The snow clung to his eyebrows like frost on an old tree branch. "Don't drive yet," I whispered through the mask. "You're not well." He smiled faintly, that kind of smile that hides pain. "I'll rest when you're safe," Cooper barked once from behind him, impatient to see me. One of the medics leaned out. "We can bring the dog up front once we start moving. Just keep him calm." The promise settled my panic. For the first time in hours, I wasn't fighting alone. As the doors slammed shut, the city blurred into streaks of gray and orange light through the small rear window. The siren rose again, long and slow, cutting a path through the storm. I counted along with each wail, inhale, exhale, to keep rhythm. One medic spoke quietly into a radio, his voice reassuring. "ETA 15 minutes. Patient responsive, oxygen stable." Their calmness became my anchor. I wanted to thank them, but the mask hissed loud against my words. Then I saw movement outside, through the frost on the glass, the faint outline of headlights tailing us. Mr. Hahn's sedan, small against the storm. My chest loosened at the sight. He was keeping his promise. The world tilted again as we rounded a bend. The storm had eaten the horizon, but a low violet light hinted that morning hid somewhere behind it. I drifted in and out of awareness. When I couldn't tell dreams from reality, I held on to the sound of Cooper's steady bark from the front cabin, his occasional whine, his refusal to leave. A memory rose through the fog, the hospital ward last spring, Mom holding my ankle still while a nurse taught me how to count my breaths after each puff of the inhaler. "Always trust the count," Mom had said. "Don't rush what keeps you alive." Back then, I hadn't understood what she meant. Now, every count carried the shape of her fear and love pressed together in a single breath. The ambulance jolted, hitting a patch of uneven road. Lights flickered. The medic holding the monitor frowned. "Storm's cutting radio contact," he told his partner. "Keep line 3 open in case dispatch calls through Han's phone." Through the crack of the rear doors, I glimpsed the world whitening again. Snow had swallowed the road's shoulders, but the driver kept the siren constant like a heartbeat. Steady, certain. Beside me, the monitoring machine beeped in rhythm. The medic adjusted something on my arm. "You're doing great," he said softly. "We'll stabilize you fully soon. What's your name?" "Lena," I croaked. The name drifted out, weak but sure. "My mom. Does she know?" "We've been trying to reach her," he said. "Signal keeps cutting, but we'll keep trying." The thought of Mom's voice made my chest tight again. "She'll be scared." He smiled kindly. "She'll be proud first." The next few minutes unraveled like film through a projector. Flashes of light, muffled dialogue, someone counting pulse rates. Then the static-filled crack of the radio. "Base to ambulance 74. Patient's mother located. Request, patch through." The medic toggled a switch. "You're live." Her voice broke through faint but unmistakable. "Lena, can you hear me?" Tears pooled instantly under the mask. I managed a shaky nod, though she couldn't see it. "Mom," I whispered, breath frosting the inside of the plastic. "Oh, sweetheart." The signal caught, distorting her sob into something thin. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize the pharmacy closed early. I should have—" "It's okay," I said, forcing the words steady. "Cooper helped. We found Mr. Hahn. He drove me." A pause, filled with disbelief and pride. That dog always knew what to do. Then quieter, a mother's confession bleeding through the static. "I should have been there." The medic gave a small wave, signaling I needed rest. "She's safe now, ma'am." he said into the radio. "Vitals improving." The line faded, but the warmth of her voice stayed like a blanket over me. By the time we reached the hospital entrance, dawn had pushed a thin glow through the fog. The paramedics flung the doors open to bright floodlights and hurried silhouettes in winter coats. I felt the rush of heat from inside before I saw the doorway. Cooper barked wildly as they rolled the stretcher out, running alongside the wheels until one nurse scooped him gently into her arms. They guided us through double doors that hissed open like sighs of relief. The hall smelled of coffee and bleach and something new, safety. Voices overlapped with orders. "Prep room B, oxygen full flow. Notify attending." I drifted again, surfacing occasionally to flashes of color, Mr. Hahn arguing softly about signing forms, Cooper sitting patient beside my bed, his eyes fixed ahead as if guarding the whole room. Every time the mask fogged, he nudged my hand until I moved it, just enough for another breath. At some point I heard the paramedics debriefing a nurse. The neighbor insisted on driving her through the storm himself. Could have been 2 patients instead of 1. They hadn't seen how his hands shook when he gave me those car keys, or how he smiled through the ache in his chest. Later, when the machines around me hummed steady again, the door cracked open. I saw Mr. Hahn framed in the light from the corridor, hair damp, coat dusted white. "You're safe now, child," he said softly. "I'll wait for your mother outside." "Stay," I murmured. "Please." He hesitated before stepping inside. For a moment. Cooper shifted closer, head resting on my arm. The nurse adjusted the oxygen tube and smiled. "He hasn't let anyone near her bed except you," she said. Mr. Hahn chuckled quietly, eyes glimmering with fatigue. A guardian in fur. The world should have more of those. We sat in silence for a long time. The storm outside faded to gentle flakes against the window, light enough to catch and melt before touching the ground. The steady beeping beside me echoed the rhythm I'd memorized through the night, the rhythm of surviving. Just before my eyelids sank closed again, I felt Mr. Hahn's hand brush Cooper's head. "Thank you, old friend," he whispered. When I woke later that morning, sunlight poured thin and clear through the blinds. My lungs felt light again, almost normal. Nurses moved quietly around, checking charts. Someone said they'd keep me for observation. Through the window, I saw 2 shapes by the bench. Outside, my mother wrapped in her blue hospital parka, shoulders shaking as she hugged Mr. Hahn. And beside them, Cooper leaning against her knees. She buried her face in his fur, laughing and crying all at once. The sight blurred through happy tears. Every noise of the hospital faded until only one truth filled the space between heartbeats. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. Morning arrived slowly, the kind of quiet light that made every surface look gentler. I woke to the faint buzz of hospital machines and the warmth of fur against my hand. Cooper lay curled beside the bed, his body half under the blanket as if keeping me anchored to the world. The air smelled of antiseptic and faint soap. For a moment, I thought we were still out there in the snow until the rhythmic beep of a monitor reminded me where I was. My chest felt odd, empty, and full at the same time. Breathing came easy now, each inhale smooth, unremarkable, a miracle disguised as routine. A nurse entered, her sneakers silent on the tile, a paper cup of water in hand. "Good morning, sweetie," she said softly. "You're stable. Doctor says that quick action probably kept you from respiratory collapse." The word collapse hung in the air like something fragile she didn't want to touch. I nodded anyway. "Is Mr. Hahn okay?" "He's fine," she said. "Mild heart strain. They're keeping him overnight for monitoring. He keeps asking the staff about you." I smiled weakly. "Typical grandpa move." She chuckled. "He earned the title last night." Adjusting the blanket, she added, "That dog of yours didn't leave the doorway while you were asleep. The security guard tried to take him out for a minute, and he howled so loud the entire floor heard." I reached down to stroke Cooper's ear. His tail thumped once against the bed frame, though his eyes stayed closed. "You never gave up, did you?" He lifted his head enough to lick my wrist as if answering. That small gesture made my throat ache more than any fever. The nurse left after checking the monitors. Outside the window, Pale sunlight washed across the parking lot, turning the leftover snow into slow-moving rivers of melt. I could see the world again without the heavy film of fear. A knock sounded at the door, polite but hesitant. Mom stepped in. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight bun, her hospital badge still clipped crooked to her coat. Her eyes were red-rimmed but shining. "Hey, my love," she said, voice trembling. I tried to sit up, but she waved me still. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and wrapped her arms around me carefully, mindful of the IV line. The hug was quiet at first, just warmth and breath. Then she whispered, "I'm so sorry." "You were saving people," I said. "I just didn't want to wait." She laughed softly through tears. "You definitely didn't. You scared me half to death." She brushed a strand of hair from my forehead. "I called every cab. Company in town before they told me the ambulance had you." Guilt rippled through me, faint but real. "I almost called you first," I admitted. "But the phone was dying and—" She shook her head. "Don't explain, just promise next time we talk before you become your own rescue team." Cooper lifted his head and barked once, as if seconding her request. We both laughed and the tension broke completely. Mom's hand slipped into mine. "You taught me something, though," she said after a moment. "I've been working so hard to fix our lives that I forgot that being there matters more than being perfect." Her words soaked into me slowly. "You're here now," I said. "And that's where I'll stay more often," she promised. When she left to sign discharge forms, Mr. Hahn appeared in her place, wearing a visitor badge and carrying a small thermos in both hands. His coat was sprinkled with dried snow, his smile weary but bright. "Best hospital coffee is terrible," he said, "so I brought tea instead." He set the thermos on my tray table. The smell of peppermint filled the room. "You look stronger." "Because of you," I replied. He waved it off. "Because of yourself. I just followed orders from a very determined child and her very loud dog." I grinned. "Still, I'm glad you didn't let me wander that storm alone." He nodded, his gaze softening. "We both found new courage last night. You found yours in leaving home. I found mine, remembering what it feels like to matter again." We shared the tea, silence folding comfortably around us. When Mom returned, she thanked him in a voice so heartfelt that he looked away, embarrassed. "You've done enough," she said. "Let us take care of you now." He smiled wistfully. "Care isn't a one-way thing. It travels in circles." That evening, after they left me to rest, I stared at the ceiling tiles until their patterns blurred. The doctor had come by earlier, suggesting a home care nurse visit once a week to ensure medication tracking and emergency readiness. I nodded, more grateful than I could say. Having someone check in didn't sound like weakness anymore. It sounded like breathing space. The monitor's steady rhythm lulled me toward sleep, but my mind wandered. To the snow, the road, the porch light that had looked like hope itself. Every moment felt stitched together now into one long thread leading me back to safety. Before closing my eyes, I bent down and whispered to Cooper. "We saved ourselves, but they helped." He sighed heavily, the kind of sigh dogs make when everything in their small world is finally right. The next morning arrived brighter. They let me sit near the window seat with breakfast on my lap, sunlight warming my knees. Mom fussed with my sweater like she might never stop. Mr. Hahn read the newspaper aloud from a nearby chair, exaggerating headlines so I'd laugh. Cooper watched each of us with equal loyalty, ears twitching whenever someone spoke. When the doctor entered, clipboard in hand, she smiled. "You can go home tomorrow." "Really?" Mom asked, relief mixing with disbelief. "She'll have a nurse check in, but yes. Her oxygen levels are back to normal." Then to me, "You did everything right when it mattered." That praise felt larger than the room. I didn't know how to respond except to look at Cooper and whisper, "We did it." Later, after everyone left me to nap, I traced circles over the blanket, thinking of how different warmth felt after nearly losing it. I realized bravery hadn't been walking into the snow. It had been refusing to give up, breath by breath, when everything told me to stop trying. Evening softened the room into color again. I leaned forward, hand resting on Cooper's back. "You never gave up," I said aloud. His tail thumped once. So I won't either. Down the hallway, someone laughed, the sound drifting like a melody. Hospital smells faded behind the faint scent of peppermint still lingering from the tea. For the first time in years, my lungs felt clear, my heart steady, as if both were learning rhythm from each other. What I remembered most from that day wasn't the hospital or the fear. It was the feeling of breathing without thinking about it, like life had quietly agreed to keep me. Weeks later, the world outside our windows no longer looked sharp with snow. The trees were bare but calm, branches stretching into air that smelled of thawing earth and faint detergent from every open window. At home, the kitchen was bright again, sunlight flickering across pots, the clock ticking steady. Mom's night shifts had stopped. Her new schedule meant dinners together, even if they were simple soup and bread. Every morning, she placed my medicine kit by the window above the sink, where the light caught it first. The inhaler sat there like a sentinel, clean, full, ready. She never forgot now, but neither did I. We had both learned what forgetting costs. Cooper patrolled the house as if assigned to it. He was older already, or maybe carrying the weight of that night had made him gentler. He'd lie near the door until he heard the soft hiss of the spray that meant I'd use my medication, then wag once before settling back down. His eyes carried the same calm assurance they always had, the quiet message that he'd seen me at my weakest and stayed anyway. On Saturdays, when snow melted into clear puddles along the curb, we walked to the park again. The path that had once led us into fear now smelled only of wet bark and spring. Children shouted around us, the normal noise of lives not haunted by empty cabinets. Each sound felt precious. When I tell people about that night now, they always ask how I remembered to keep moving, how a sick child could push through snow and fear. I never feel brave enough for their tone. I tell them it wasn't courage that kept me walking. It was breath itself, the stubborn insistence to keep one, then another, until the next was possible. I also tell them about the quiet people who appear when you least expect them. The pharmacist who still grieved his wife but found the strength to save another. The janitor who opened a locked clinic because a dog refused to stop barking. The paramedics who carried calm like light through the storm. They remind me that we survive by leaning on one another long before we ever stand alone. Mom says every crisis leaves behind a new rhythm for a family. Ours now sounded like the scrape of Cooper's claws across wood floors, the clink of dishes at dinner, the soft wheeze of my nebulizer's finished tone, followed by her voice calling from the kitchen. "You good, love?" And my steady answer, "Always." One afternoon, the sun broke free of clouds, just as we sat down to eat. The light stretched across the tablecloth, bright and golden, catching the edge of my medication case. I picked it up, turning it once in my hands. The plastic gleamed clean, ordinary, and alive, with purpose. I set it in the center of the table where both of us could see it. "We won't hide it anymore," I said. Mom smiled. "No more hiding. We wait for nothing." It felt right then to whisper a promise, not only to her but to myself and to the faithful creature dozing by the door. A promise that I would never again let fear or pride keep me silent when I needed help. The day slid gently toward evening, the kind of calm that belonged to houses that had known worry and outlived it. Cooper stretched, groaned softly, and placed his head on my foot. I reached down and brushed his fur, grateful for its warmth. Sometimes I think courage sounds like barking in the dark. Sometimes it's the hush that follows when you finally understand you're safe. That night, as I placed my medication neatly on the windowsill, I whispered, "We made it through." The glass caught my reflection, cheeks flushed with light, eyes clear. Outside, the world breathed easily again. If stories of quiet courage move you, subscribe and share so more hearts can feel seen.